This is the SF Productions Podcast Network.
We'll be right back with more commercials after some football.
From the Pop Culture Bunker, I'm Mindy.
And I'm Mark. You can check out our audio podcast, How I Got My Way Through Comics, on iTunes or on our website, sfpodcastnetwork.com. So as we tape this, the superb Owl is in the pre-game show right now.
Yes.
I'm not a big sports fan, and the teams in the big game really don't interest me. I'll be basically skipping through the action on the DVR just to see the commercials.
He says that now, but he sometimes watches the game.
And with all the fragmentation of media options out there, the game has really become one of the few remaining events where everyone comes together. Mm-hmm. As many people in the tent as you're going to possibly get.
Yes.
And it's become almost a national holiday. I mean, there's stores and restaurants close early.
And it's really not even because of the football, because, you know, you survey people and half of them say they watch it for the commercials.
And the networks get a lot of money for these commercials. If you adjust it to 2011 numbers, they've gone from $250,000 in 1967 for the first game to $4 million this year. And that's for a 30-second ad. Mm-hmm. So we thought we'd just talk about some of the ads that have been there in the history of those ads. Some of the early ones, there was Noxzema shaving cream. This was circa 73, somewhere in there. That was with Farrah Fawcett and Joe Namath. And this was Farrah Fawcett, I'm pretty sure, before Charlie's Angels.
Pre-Charlie's Angels, yes.
Master Lock did a commercial that they repeated for several years where they're showing you how strong their lock is by shooting it with a gun.
You can't shoot it off like they did in the TV shows, apparently.
Right. There's one you might remember from Xerox called Monks, where there's a monk trying to keep writing up the illuminated text, and he's like, "Oh, I got an idea," and he goes and just runs off copies.
Yeah.
Coke, of course, had the famous Mean Joe Green ad where he's all dejected coming out because he's just been beaten up in the game, and the kid gives him a Coke. And
he ends up giving the kid his smelly jersey.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Radio Shack. This was in the late 70s. They were pushing the TRS-80, the Trash 80 computer.
Yes. Hey, don't laugh. I had a Trash 80. Well, I didn't have it. Right. Our family did.
Right. But in terms of computers, at least, the breakthrough event was 30 years ago this year. Apple's first ad for the Mac, the famous 1984 ad directed by Ridley Scott. It only aired once on television because George Orwell's estate sent a cease and desist letter because it was very reminiscent of the book 1984.
Yeah. So
all game commercials after that really became events because it made such a huge impression and it was a major event where now entire campaigns were now built around the commercial. Mm-hmm. And millions were spent to make them.
Yeah. Think GoDaddy now.
Right. Yeah. It's important, of course, when your ad is slotted. The first commercials after kickoff is really the prime position that most people will be watching at that point. Because if the game's a blowout, you don't want to be in the second half.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the second half ads end up being repeats of earlier ads. Mm-hmm. Of course, can't forget Bud Bowl, starting in 1989, which featured stop-motion beer bottles. It ran every year through 1997, through Bud Bowl 8. USA Today began an ad meter that same year in 89 where they surveyed focus groups in real time during the game. And if you look at the records, soda and beer commercials have pretty much dominated their number one spot.
And that may just be because they have more money to spend on their commercials.
Right, exactly. So a 1993 Nike ad with Looney Tunes characters actually inspired the movie Space Jam. So a movie ended up being based on the commercial. But in 1996, the first movie to use the game to kick off their whole ad campaign was Independence Day. and that was such a huge hit. So now the studios pretty much fight for ad spots. And all the big movies for this year, especially the big genre and action movies, you'll see an ad in the game. During the first web bubble in the late 90s, when the web was everything and anybody with a name for a domain and no actual business ideas, they threw money at them. And they'd throw so much money, they're like, hey, let's get an ad for the big game. And internet companies, in some cases, blew their entire yearly revenue on an ad, to the point where, in some cases, it put them out of business. You know, whatever happened to Buy.com or HotJobs.com, who both had ads in '99. Epidemic.com.
What was Epidemic.com?
I couldn't even find what it was. Lifeminders.com and the infamous Pets.com with the sock puppet.
Yeah, Pets.com, everybody remembers.
2000. All companies that if you do a web search for them now, they either don't exist or they've been sucked into another company. So, of course, since people are snacking throughout the game, beer and soda are natural fit. Budweiser is a perennial ad buyer. Many times they use the Clydesdales to pull your heartstrings. They even did a 9/11 ad that year and had the horses like looking down at the cityscape. And so Coke and Pepsi have staged their cola wars pretty much every year, often with huge movie and music stars, because again, they got plenty of money to throw around.
Well, and if you're talking about pop, that brings up a controversy for this year.
Right.
Which is SodaStream wanted to put an ad on.
Right.
But they can't.
Yeah, they got banned by the network. In fact, this is the second year in a row. SodaStream had an ad in 2013 that had direct attacks on Coke and Pepsi, and the network refused to show it during the game. There's a new one. This year they figured out, hey, we can do something we know will not get allowed, and then we can put it on the net and get a lot more publicity and not have to pay for an ad.
Not have to pay for the ad.
In this case, it was Scarlett Johansson in the ad, and she's very seductively drinking this soda.
Yes.
Of course, you need something to go along with that pop, so Doritos has had a yearly contest since 2006 where they allowed amateurs to turn in their own commercials, and then people can go online and vote for what the one they want out there.
So this is really a cheap way for them to get their commercials made.
Right, yeah. And the winner gets their ad on the big game and a big cash prize if their ad does well on the USA Today ad meter. Like they get like I think it was maybe as much as $1 million if they hit a #1 spot on the ad meter.
Well, that might be worth it. But...
Yeah. And you mentioned GoDaddy. Some ads kind of push the boundaries of good taste, where GoDaddy has both television and internet-only versions of their ads.
They usually feature some sort of very buxom and beautiful girl, and
yeah. And then finally, the internet has really changed the ad landscape, where people now actually go out and search for the ads online to the point where you don't really have to wait for the game.
Yes.
They're all online. They're all publicized. It's a dream come true for advertisers, certainly.
But I wonder if it's actually good for the game itself, because so many people do or have been saying, oh, I just watched the game for the commercials. But if you've seen all the commercials before then, do you actually not watch the game then?
Do you go to the trouble of actually sitting down and watching the game? Good question. One example of that is the VW Force ad in 2011 with the
Darth
kid.
Vader.
The kid, Darth Vader. It got over 5 million hits on the web. So are those 5 million people then going to wait around to see when it shows on the game?
Yeah, maybe not. Now, I'm just thinking back to one of my favorite Super Bowl commercials ever.
Yeah.
Which was the cat wrangling. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Oh, I loved that commercial. I don't even remember what it was for, though.
Well, that's another problem. You may have a very memorable ad, but people don't remember what your company is.
Well, just like we were talking about Epidemic.com earlier, you know, what
do they do?
Was that? I mean, at least Pets.com, it was pretty clear that it was something to do with pets.
Right. Did they create epidemics? Did they stop epidemics?
Yeah, for all your virus needs,
Right.
I don't know. But the cat wrangling one was my favorite, and maybe I should go back on the internet and check it out again and see if I can figure out what the ad was for, because you can still find a lot of these old Super Bowl ads on YouTube.
Absolutely.
And if you want to do that, you can also check out our audio podcast, How I Got My Wife to Read Comics, on iTunes or on our website, sfpodcastnetwork.com. From the Pop Culture Bunker, I'm Mindy.
And I'm Mark. Thanks for watching.